Greetings, everyone. I am Michael Schenk. I'm with the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, and I'm joined today by three of my favorite people who do community engagement work across our carbon neutral cities and our urban sustainability directors network cities. So I'm going to put links in chat to the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance and the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, two networks that support cities around the world that are leading ambitiously in the climate space. And we're seeing some more people join, so that's great. So this will be an informal conversation. We'll have presentations from all three panelists, first from Amsterdam, then from Cleveland, then from Copenhagen. I love it. More people joining. This is great. This is great. This is Friday. It's great to see everyone. Thank you for joining us. Again, Michael Schenk with Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, here to lead a conversation on community engagement strategies. I also put some links in chat. I've written some pieces featuring Amsterdam's action networks and Cleveland's appreciative inquiry work and Copenhagen's community engagement, thinking outside the city box in terms of how they engage communities, placing climate officers in the community, which Oystein will speak to. But again, welcome everyone. Feel free to, if you've not renamed yourself so folks can see where you're from, that would be helpful. And also feel free to put in chat who you are and who you're representing, whether it's a city or perhaps private sector, NGO, CBO. So I will put some links in chat to the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and then two pieces I've written on what you'll hear today. So the run of show is this. We'll have Carlinke Jansen from Amsterdam speak to action networks first for about 10 minutes, and we'll take some questions. If you have questions for Carlinke, that's the time. And then we'll move on to David Cooperrider, talking about appreciative inquiry in the city of Cleveland and beyond, a process that I was part of, so I got to witness some of that. David will speak for about 10 minutes, then we'll have Q&A with David, and then we'll go to Copenhagen, and Oystein Leonardsen will speak to the different ways in which Copenhagen is creatively engaging the community there. Oystein will speak for about 10 minutes, and we'll have Q&A with him, and then it will be kind of an open Q&A for any questions for the whole group. So that's the plan, and as panelists are talking, feel free to put questions in chat if you'd like. I assume this to be an informal conversation. This is why we named it a salon, so that we could be in conversation with each other and learn from each other. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carlinke and to talk about the action networks in Amsterdam. Carlinke, over to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Michael, and wonderful to see you all here. I'm very pleased to be able to speak a little bit about our action network, and I will do that with a little presentation. It won't be too long. In Amsterdam, it's the end of the working day on Friday, so almost weekend for us already. I'm having a little bit of cold, so sometimes I will be coughing. I'm sorry for that. Can everybody see my presentation? I think so. Okay, I won't be able to see the chat, I think, but you will say it if you want.
I will, yes, thank you.
Anything. Okay, we're going to talk about community engagement, but first, I think not everybody knows about our action network. Our action network is called Actienetwerk Gas Terug. It means gas back, less gas, and we started in 2022. When Russia invaded the Ukraine, and we said, okay, a part of our gas in the Netherlands is from Russia, and we want to stop using their gas. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to cut our gas back 15%. So we started this action network, then called Action Network 15% Gas Back, and we started with 8 pillars. Because we thought, okay, we will focus on neighborhoods, we'll focus on business territories, industries, but also big offices. We had a pillar on data, on campaign, on connecting people, on sharing knowledge, stuff like that. But everything started with saying, okay, we don't want to be a network which is going to be slow. We are a real action network. So we just embrace everything that's there, and we want to fire everything up, all the energy that's there, and we're a coalition of the willing. So if you don't want to participate, well, then don't. And then we move on to the one who wants to keep the energy going. And that's when we started. And for communication and engagement strategies, we used more crisis communication strategies. So act now, dare to take imperfect action, just stay tuned and don't be afraid to change. Likewise, we thought, okay, we have to tell everybody that there's a crisis coming up this winter. We might be having not enough gas for all the Dutch people. So the prices will be rising up. So we prepared this campaign to let everybody know about the upcoming crisis. And 1 week before we would launch our campaign, the crisis was already there. The prices were high up. So everybody was aware about that the crisis was there. So we said, okay, well, no campaign about that. They already know it. Just change the plan and don't hold on your own babies that you thought, but this was my plan. I want to do it this way. And we planned it. And with all those money that went in, just, it's not useful anymore. Then don't. What's useful now? So always stay tuned to the actualities. And I think that's really important for community engagement, because the community is not waiting for you to tell them something that they already know. So they want to hear new things from you, and then they know like, oh, wow, you've got something to tell me and I want to stay tuned with you. So what we did, we created awareness, an overall campaign, articles on social media, visiting events. Are there any events about reducing your energies that you're using? Just be there, be present, tell your story. We also created our own events. Since the start, we had 8 events already on different locations. We are not only based in Amsterdam, we are from the Metropole Amsterdam region. That's a way bigger region. I think it's almost 1/3 of the Netherlands. And to connect to the people, not from Amsterdam, but also in the suburbans, we organize the events also in those places. So they will feel like, okay, you're coming to my house, you're coming to my place, instead of just sending it out from the main city and telling to join. And there's this one part in our events that we always have. It's a part in our program where we say, okay, what are you going to bring to our network and what do you need from the network? And it's really interactive, always asking. We ask people when they sign up front to think about this, and please write it in your application already, so we know like, oh, there is somebody who needs this and there is somebody who can bring this. Okay, we should bring them together, so we know who are there, and we are connecting on the spot. We always do that at the last part of the program, just before we are having our network drinks, and then you see like, okay, you should talk to they, and you will have to talk to her, and then you connect them, and then you see them coming up with nice ideas while having a nice drink. So that's really something that works very well to get everybody engaged. And the other thing that we did was just facilitating. Network partners were busy with doing their things, and we said, okay, how can we help you? How can we just use our network to broaden the audience of your message? How can we just facilitate you? I was facilitating all the pillars. So for the neighborhoods, if they needed something, okay, how can I help you with a campaign or stuff like that? And we are working with pilots, and that is something that is really helpful. Just not having an idea and then doing it and engaging everybody, but first do it in a really small portion in a pilot way. And if it works, then engage everybody. So you have some data to share about the effect of the measurement that you want to get through. Well, what did and what didn't work? Of course, not everything worked. Working as a coalition of the willing is something that is really helpful. Everybody who gets in contact with our network is saying, oh, wow, there is so much energy and it's so vibrant and everybody is happy to join. Yeah, well, that's because everybody who's not happy to join, just don't join. So that's really easy. And we work with this short-term goal. We started in April 2022, and our goal was for the end of 2022. So we had this really clear goal, and that worked very well. Everybody like, okay, wow, we can do this all together. And we did. Well, what also worked, what I already told, is the pilots, starting small, then go to big, and constant connecting. So we don't have an office. We all work from home. We are a network. There are only a few people working for the network, but we are constantly connecting online every 2 weeks, heading up. But I try to speak to all the leaders of the different pillars myself as well. We have this really vibrant WhatsApp group. It sounds horrible, but it's a WhatsApp group with over 150 members inside. And it works because you feel the energy, people are sharing stuff. And if when a couple of people are discussing about one subject, you say, okay, just make your own side group and discuss further over there, and then come back to the bigger group with what you figured out. And that's working very good. The flops, what didn't work? We started with, okay, we need to give everybody practical tips on how to save energy at your home. But it didn't work because a lot of people, a lot of organizations were already doing that. And it was just not the role of our network. So instead of creating all those practical tips, we switched to being this linking pin and leading people to all those pages who already give those practical tips instead of doing it ourselves all over again. And we thought it would be good to have a calendar. Everybody who was doing something about energy saving could fill it in or on our calendar, and then everybody could know what was there to do or to go to, but just nobody did because they were just busy with their own stuff. So that's something that just didn't work for us. I do see a lot of questions in the chat. Shall I, or do we?
No need to track it. We're just
yeah, okay.
We can revisit it in the Q&A after you're done.
Okay, now my chat is open and I don't see my thing anymore. Okay, well, then the challenges that we have, because I was already talking with Michael about it, but we were this action network with this short-term goal, but we reached our goal, but still there needs to be a lot less use of energy before, otherwise, well, 15% is nice, but we need to do way more. So, and we've got this network that is working really good. So it would be a shame to just stop. So now we are becoming our own organization, but it brings some challenges with you, because we had this short-term goal and now we're going to this long-term goal to 2030, like 50% cut of energy use. So the challenges are, how do you keep the energy going and floating in your network? How do you make sure you keep your focus? And now we are here to stay. We have to think about branding. Who are we? Why are we here? What are we going to do? So that are really nice challenges to work with. We are working to keep the energy and the focus on. We are still a coalition of the willing, and for all the different pillars and subjects we are working for, we will have our short-term 1-year goals that are going to be very clear. So that's the focus, and of course we've got this long-term focus, but we will have short-term focuses as well. Then another challenge that was there in the beginning and will still be there is the big city versus the suburban. I don't know if you've heard of the Calimero complex. It's about, we are this big brother Amsterdam, and we always have great ideas, but the rest of the Netherlands is thinking, oh, Amsterdam again? Yes, of course, you know better. Well, I don't care about what you think. We've got our own stuff and we can do it and we don't need you. But when you work with a coalition of the willing, there are just the most willing people are living in Amsterdam. So we are as big in Amsterdam. So that's hard because we think it's really important to get the rest together as well and stay connected with the suburbans as well. The other thing is we're growing bigger. In the beginning, everybody knew everybody. We knew where they were from. And now also in this WhatsApp group, everybody wants to stay informed, but not being overwhelmed. How are we going to manage that to keep everybody engaged? So at the moment, we've got plans to get more insights about our network, who is working on what topic, who has knowledge about what topic, and how can we combine them in smaller groups with giving sometimes updates in the bigger group so everybody knows what everybody is doing, keeping the short lines. And how are we going to do it with funding? Because we had this funding, there was this war in Russia and Ukraine, and there was a lot of money. We go, you have to do this. And now it's a long term. We're one of the many groups that do something about cutting the energy. So that are the challenges that we are heading for. And that was what I wanted to share.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And if you want to stop share your screen.
Stop sharing, and I can
conversation. Carlinke, thank you so much. I love this project so much, and I'm so glad you took time to talk to us about it and the next stage of it. And for folks just joining, welcome. This is a conversation first about Amsterdam's action networks that were in response to the war in Ukraine and a desire initially to reduce gas use by 15%. So that attends to the crisis communications that Carlinke talked about in the beginning of her presentation. But the short-term aspect of it, I think, is really compelling because in a lot of this climate work, it feels so 2040, 2050. And for folks, as it pertains to behavior change, they need to see the results now. They need to have that positive reinforcement now. And so the short-term aspect of this, I think, is so compelling.
Yeah, and maybe something I want to add as well shortly is that we've learned a lot in the first year. And what we did is all the lessons we've learned, we made this small practical tips on different subjects. And we reformed our website, and it's just downloadable on our website. So everybody don't have to figure it out themselves, all the lessons that we've learned. So we are sharing that as well.
Fantastic. So questions, thanks, Carlinke. Questions for Carlinke in terms of the Action Network, past and present and future. And I appreciate you naming some of the challenges in terms of going forward and staying unique in a sea of multiple responses right now. Folks want to weigh in with any questions for Carlinke? Do you still have a site? And Carlinke, while we're waiting to see if there are any questions, do you still have a website, or did you take that down for the?
Yeah, we have a new one.
Great. If you're willing to share that in chat, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's in Dutch. Sorry, guys.
Great.
How's your Dutch?
Google Translate is excellent.
Yeah, true.
Very nice. That's great.
Yeah, we got our new logo and
see. Great to see. All right. Well, if there are no questions now, and if some come up, feel free to put in chat. But let's, Oystein, yes, over to you. I see the hand.
I mean, we can't have a conversation without talking.
Exactly. My thought. Exactly. What do you got?
Now, what I was wondering about, if you could elaborate a little bit on what methodologies or previous projects or theories or where do you get your inspiration for your work? What do you build on? I'm absolutely sure you didn't just drop out of the blue air.
Honestly?
On which shoulder are you looking further?
No, well, actually, for me speaking, I'm just, I did a lot of work before on crisis communication, so that's how I joined the Action Network. I came there accidentally. They asked me to summarize their second or third event, and the people who were thinking about the campaign and communication at that point had to present their plans, but I didn't really had that good of their plans weren't that good. And I had to summarize the event, and we were talking about it, and the leader of the Action Network wasn't that happy as well. And 2 weeks later, I was the head of the campaign. So and I told them, you should not see this as a normal campaign. You have to see it as a crisis communication. So my inspiration is the background on crisis communication, how to fix that, and just always being flexible and dare to take those actions. But at the moment, we get our inspirations from the people in the network. There are always people who are seeing things, having these great insights. Like there was this painter who said, yeah, well, we've got this really big firm with a flat black roof. And in the summer, it's really hot, and I have to put the airco on because otherwise we're not able to work there, and it costs loads and loads of money. And he was thinking, we are painters. What happens if we paint our roof white? And then we're like, well, sounds nice. And somebody else says, yeah, well, they're in the more southern parts of Europe. They all have white houses and white roofs because it's way colder inside of the houses. What's stupid? Why is it all black in our country? And then we think, okay, sounds like something that can work, but we have to figure it out how it works, and does it really make that much of an impact? So then we start a pilot. We've got another organization in the network who is very good in data and measuring temperatures. So the painter painted his roof white. The other one put a plug inside the roof and inside the building to measure the temperature, made a nice graphic, and we see, okay, this is really working, because in the summer, a normal summer day when it's 23 degrees outside, the roof will heat up to 60 degrees Celsius. And the climate inside will change for 5 degrees Celsius higher. And with the white roof, the roof is just the same as the outside temperature, and there's no heating up in the inside. So you don't have to use your airco anymore. So that are things like that, those insights that give you all the energy you need to get inspired and keep going on.
Great, thank you for that practical illustration too. Let's move on to you, David, if you're ready to talk about appreciative inquiry in the city of Cleveland and beyond. Carlinke, thank you so much again for that presentation. Action Networks. David, over to you.
I can get this up. Let's see. Oops. Shoot. Is it? Is this screen sharing? Let's see.
We're seeing the screen share. We're seeing multiple slides on one.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
Well, Carlinke, I love what you're doing, and I really picked up. I want to build on the pilots and rapid prototyping and so on. So I'm really excited to be here, and thank you, Michael, and Oystein and Carlinke and everybody. I feel like we're entering a period of time like that Academy Award-winning movie. You know, it's about changing everything, everywhere, with everyone, all at once. And I want to share a little vision that's emerging, but mostly introduce the idea of the appreciative inquiry summit process and our work with the city of Cleveland. And as I was preparing, I just, I had a chance recently to be with the 3 grandchildren for a month. And it was just awesome. There's a little reverie, and then Hugo on the left, and Uma on the right. They're from Denmark. They're from Copenhagen, and I got to spend a whole month with them. But it just, as I looked into their eyes, I said, what kind of world are they going to see in 2040? And I made a promise. I'm going to spend every minute of my life working on this massive transition. I think it's the largest change project in human history. Involves mobilizing change at scales and speed we've never, that we can't hardly even understand. It feels like we've been sleepwalking since the science, over 40 years of the science and so on. And, to end the climate crisis in a generation and turn the corner to an economy and world of full spectrum flourishing, this is a mission. And I think it's not about, right now, it's less about technology and economics and so on. And it is about the breaking of the social bond and coming together and so on. So anyway, my passion has been the question of change at the scale of the whole. I teach in a business school and work with lots of different kinds of organizations. And in recent years, it's change this, change that, change on leaders' mind. But the leader's question has shifted in recent years. It's not just a question of change. It's how do we change at the scale of the whole? How do we move together? How do we move this whole 67,000 person telecommunications company together? How do we move this whole economic and Northeast Ohio region together? And that's where my passion has been. And on the practical side, that's what I'm going to share a bit about. Again, I've been researching this whole systems design kind of process of appreciative inquiry for a number of decades. You can imagine the complexities, like at Apple, when Tim Cook wants to, work with all the supply chains around the world, move towards circular products and so on. It was exciting to work there. I won't go into it right now. On the lower left, Bob Stiller, one of my heroes, he was an entrepreneur and took over Green Mountain Coffee Roasters. It was going bankrupt. It was a very small company in Vermont. And he grew that company through the appreciative inquiry process, bringing the whole system into the room to do the planning every year. The people who fill the trucks, the coffee growers from Costa Rica and around the world, the hotels that use their, he broke down all the barriers and would bring 500, 600, 700 people into the room to do the planning process. Some of these have been out of my league, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama called at one point. He was in Jerusalem and said, oh my gosh, he felt the tensions in the world in ways he had never felt before, and said, oh my gosh, if just the world's religious leaders, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, and so on, could just talk to one another. We don't know what's in each other's hearts. So he called on the appreciative inquiry process, and we did 5 summits at Stanford University to design what's called the United Religions Initiative to end religious violence in the world and create cultures of peace. And today there's 10,000 centers around the world doing this interfaith work and bringing people together. Again, it was way out of my league as a business school professor, but it was really important and exciting. On the lower middle, Kofi Annan, again, out of my league. And but it was, I think we're all being called beyond our capabilities in some ways. And he wanted to host the largest meeting in history between CEOs and the largest corporations in the world and the United Nations. And he decided we have to change the way we do world summits. They're usually talking heads or pre-negotiated agreements, but how do we come together and co-create? And out of that, the growth of the United Nations Global Compact. They now have 23,000 corporations and in civil society dialogue and nation states. Well, that inspired, I'll just share on the lower right-hand side, that inspired Mayor Jackson in the city. I teach at Case Western Reserve University in the city that I live in. That inspired him to see the potential in all of this. And in particular, he said, can we begin to do the appreciative inquiry process with the whole city involved? And in all of this work, I'll come back to that one. I find myself like when, that yes, it's turbulent. Yes, it's extremely challenging. Look at the last number of years with 6.8 million deaths with COVID and the mega floods and mega droughts and the, George Floyd, I can't breathe, and on and on. But in all this work, I find my hope going up. And I love this definition of hope. The economist and ecologist David Orr, hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. And so just a couple little things, I'll leave some articles and so on. But what is appreciative inquiry? The first is it's got three pillars to it. It emerges from the positive human sciences. Marty Seligman launched what's called the positive psychology revolution. It used to be in the human sciences, out of 44,000 journal articles, 98% of them were on what's wrong with the human being. And he said, what about a human science? How about at least a 50-50, a science of human thriving, a science of collective flourishing, a science of coming together? So I'll come back to that one. The second is whole systems, like if we're working with a trucking company, that we'll have the CEO and the head of finance and all of that, but also the dock workers, the truck drivers, the customers, the supply chain partners. So I'll come back to this other notion of wholeness. And then design inspired, like Carlinke talking about the rapid prototyping and pilots and thinking like taking a page from the design field. And on the strength side, this is an easy way to make the bridge to appreciative inquiry. Peter Drucker, the father of management thought, he was 93 years old at the time he called me to his home. And he wanted to hear about our work with cities and the Navy and the United Nations. And he was so curious. If my curiosity velocity is like his at 93, I'll be so happy. He asked one question after another. Finally, I was able to ask one question. I said, but Peter, you've written on leadership and change more than anybody else in history. You created the field of management theory. And I said, could you put it in a nutshell? And he said, David, it's easy. The task of leadership is to create this alignment of strengths in ways that make a system's weaknesses irrelevant. And I wrote it down. The task of leadership is to create this alignment of strengths in ways that make a system's weaknesses irrelevant. Well, that's a nice bridge, because where are the tools for the rapid elevation of systemic strengths, human strengths, cultural, technological, and so on? Where are the tools for creating combination effects, multiplier effects, new chemistry effects of bringing people across all these boundaries? And that's one of the things that appreciative inquiry is about. We'll often do this work in groups of 500 to 2,000 stakeholders. With United Way of America, we had 2,500. Typically over a 3-day period of time. It takes time to go beyond ego and turf and silos and separations, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, government. And so this is just a little image of this. So this sustainable Cleveland story started when Mayor Jackson saw what was happening with Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and the birth of the United Nations Global Compact. And he thought, you know, this is really, really important. We're a city on one of the Great Lakes, Lake Erie. And we were known for being completely toxic and polluted. In 1969, the whole river that runs through the middle of Cleveland was on fire and it couldn't be put out because of the toxicity. Everybody called Cleveland a mistake on the lake. And so a steering committee came together to design a citywide summit, trisectoral, residents, homeless, people from every class and race. And they gave it a title, Coming Together, to create an economic engine to design and come together to create a green city on a blue lake. The city had never done anything like that, and it was exciting. And you know, to take over the city hall conference room and have people prototyping and so on. This is Van Jones. He's a great thinker on CNN, but he came and just had a lot to contribute. Let me show you just a little clip of this in action, and then I'll share a little bit more. Oh, and also just the stakeholders that were there. Big business, prominent businesses, unions, labor, media, communications, the great universities, researchers, people from all the neighborhoods, engineers and scientists, the nonprofit, the arts and culture, a real key, the students and youth leaders, but also we all often bring external stakeholders to these things. And we had teams from Denmark coming, especially around the wind energy question. So it was really exciting. I'll just share just a little clip of it.
I just can't tell you how excited and happy I am to be a part of what is going to be looked back on the history.
This summit is about. It's about acting on something, not just having a conversation. It's about doing something for our future, not waiting on someone else to determine what that is.
The mayor bringing together all these people is just, it's unprecedented. It's never been done before.
Sustainability is not just a concern of environment. It's an opportunity for economic development.
Where there's a will, there's a way, and there's apparently great will here in Cleveland.
Cities are so central, and why it's so important for sessions like this to come together, and not just come together, but to commit themselves to a course of action that really puts our country on a different trajectory.
The really positive examples of change I can think of are when people kind of get it together to start living together differently locally.
It's a process where, because the people create the vision, they automatically see their role, what role they have to play in making sure that the vision gets accomplished.
This moment is so different. What we've learned from the past, what we've learned from past strategies and programming has taken us to this point, which is it's so different time. But now it's all possible. I might not have believed that 20 years ago, but now I do.
We're creating that vision collectively with 700 people in the room, rolling up our sleeves.
Everything that we've done today and the past 2 days has never been done before in Cleveland. The energy that is in this room is so positive. It's so rewarding to be part of this process. And it's one of those things that you're just so proud to be from Cleveland.
There's enough passion and commitment in this room that's going to happen, that we're going to be able to harness what we've put together here and that momentum and move it forward.
So right after that first summit, the news, the mayor said the news has never treated him better. But in turn, he said, you don't know what it's like to be a leader today in the news media. But what he did at the end of the summit, he saw something in Cleveland and a collaborative coming together across every boundary, and great CEOs in the room, and again, you know, youth from the city public schools that were just so powerful. And he saw the actions developing. It wasn't just a dialogue. We were prototyping things, and And he's got up at the end and didn't even talk to his chief of staff, and he announced that we're going to do this every year for the next 10 years. And so I worked with him over those 10 years through and now it's into its 13th year. And with appreciative inquiry and a summit like this, in addition to the wholeness, there's a real power in the experiencing of the whole. Somehow it brings out the very, very best in human beings and their listening and their capability to create and so on. I won't go through the stages. These are like a half day to a day in each of these stages. The discovery phase, lifting up everything that gives life and strength and capacity to Cleveland. The very powerful discussions and interviews. We map what we call the positive core, all past, present, future strengths. And then we step into the future, 10 years out, and this gets very creative. And then we move into design studios where opportunities to take action have been discovered, and people vote with their feet. I want to work on the urban farms, and I want to work on the mobility systems and so on. So we came out of this with over around 24 working groups around clean energy and advanced renewable energies, advanced manufacturing and materials, green buildings and retrofits and circularity, health and nutritional excellence and so on, vacant land use and green space. What was so interesting to me, because I didn't know it was going to happen again the next year, out of 24 working groups, how many do you think, and these are all voluntary, how many do you think came to the next year's summit? Just realizing how change efforts often are hard to sustain and so on. These were all volunteer. Well, I share that because it did shock me. Not only were there the 24 original, but there were 28 working groups. So it grew. And I like to think of this. I think our world is calling for a next stage in democracy. And when I talk to political scientists, I don't see it. And I don't see the vision. But what's clear to me is that people don't get me wrong, I might go a little overboard on this. People love the town hall meetings and the grassroots and brainstorming and having dialogues and so on. But then they say, oh, we had such a good dialogue, but now what? And people are aching to go beyond dialogue into great design. And so, like, one of the working groups, for example, was working, there were 24 working groups, people vote with their feet. One was on creating one of the first freshwater wind energy systems in Lake Erie. And that's hard with engineering issues of frozen lakes and stuff like that. That group went out and got $5 million to continue planning. A few years later, they got 56 million to do the first pilots. And right now, at the state level, the regulations were holding it up a bit, but they went on and it just passed the Supreme Court that we can go forward with that. Just one of the things that was really clear was the power and energy of the intergenerational. Margaret Mead said, when is a society learning the most in her anthropological studies? And her argument was it's when we're in circles with, sitting around the campfire with the youth and children, with the elders, with the middle adults. And so every time we do this now, we're bringing the energy of youth, not just as a token, here we'll do a survey with you or focus, but at the seat of decision making. And I think that's really important. I can talk a little bit later about different designs, single summits, often annual, This one has gone on. It was meant to be, it emerged to go to 10 years, and now with the new mayor, it's continued over the last 3 years. Multi-summits. We're experimenting now with having summits going on simultaneously and then just linking them in a soft touch way to share, okay, we're in Singapore and this is what we're working on, and this might affect your thinking in Cleveland, and so on. So, so they're doing their own work, but every once in a while, some touch points or recordings across time zones and so on. The United Nations report called it the best large group method in the world. And I just I'll end here with, I just completed one with Jesper Broden, the CEO of IKEA, and Hala Tomasdottir. She's head of the B team in Europe. And they wrote a bit for one of my books. And they said, we're in this critical decade, maybe the most important one for humankind. The clock is ticking, future generations are counting on us, and history has its eyes on us. How will you choose to lead? So anyway, I probably went over a little bit, but I'd love to get into a little bit of discussion, and if there's questions, I'm ready to open it up.
Thank you, David. And one question came in already from Carlinke in chat in terms of youth engagement. How do you get them to join?
Yeah.
You.
What we did, this steering committee, as they were planning the summit, included a lot of teachers as well as executives and nonprofit leaders and neighborhood leaders and so on. But it was important to have the teachers there. And in the Cleveland public schools, they came forward and brought 150 students. And it was so exciting. So they made it part of the curriculum, part of the learning process, and get into the real world with action learning. And they were so passionate and hungry for contribution, and their visions of creating these models of completely circular buildings and so on. They were awesome. I remember when we did this with the whole United States dairy industry, we brought the whole industry together. It was the youth that turned the corner. On the second day, one of the youth stood up and said, I've been part of family farms, my family for generations. And this young person said, and I thought until this moment, I thought I was going to go into farming as well. But I don't see you adults being serious enough about the transformations that are needed. And he went on, and anyway, it turned the corner on that whole summit. The next 2 days were completely different. Soon that project emerged as at a national level, and Obama invited that project to the White House for an award ceremony, saying this is an industry that's getting its act together. And the difference was having the youth there. Margaret Mead's notion, when is the maximum learning happening? It's when we're all together in a storytelling kind of narrative rich mode.
Love how it was part of their curriculum. That's a great way to bake in active participation. Other questions for David before we go to Oystein? How do you bridge between the high in conference and the down in the everyday? Great question.
Yeah. We call it the light touch of post-summit work. The mayor is at that time the chief of sustainability with the mayor. She was a former journalist. And so she created this really narrative-rich structure of helping to emerge every minor moment of progress. She called it the progress principle, and have people share stories massively and quickly with each other. And these groups just continue to grow and take, bold steps. For example, I shared the freshwater offshore wind energy group, but another group saw all the vacant, dilapidated properties in Cleveland, and they went they created a plan for those to become urban farms, and they went to Cleveland City Council. They helped prepare a proposal. They got a legislation changed so that anybody who wanted to create an urban farm could do so for $1, just a 10-year lease for $1. Anyway, so I think one of the things I want to just emphasize is that it's the phase that emerges the greatest trust and the greatest internal commitment to follow through is the design phase, where you set up the room almost like you would see at a great design firm like IDEO or so. And people, it's in that design, like in America, when we say, when were we at our best? Well, one of the times we were at our best was the early days when people would come together and build their neighbor's barn. Everybody would bring something, a nail, a piece of wood, whatever, and build their neighbor's barn together in that barn building process. And I think there's something really important about really designing, not just, I almost want a bumper sticker, you're going to hate me for this, that says down with dialogue and up with design. Because I think too often dialogue has become like a checklist. Let's make sure we do some focus groups or a survey with that community, as opposed to coming to the real table of power to design the future.
Fascinating. Yeah, I look forward to that bumper sticker that you build.
Sorry about that. I mean,
positive. I love it. No, it's very interesting. All right, let's keep the conversation going. And if more questions come up for David, please feel free to put them in chat, because we can continue the conversation there. Oystein Leonardsen, take us over to Copenhagen and tell us about what you're doing with communities there. Over to you, David. Thank you so much. More questions coming in. So David, feel free to engage Yvonne with the question that comes in. All right.
Yeah. My name is Oystein Leonardsen, and I work in the city of Copenhagen as a program director for green and just transition in urban regeneration. And I'm going to talk a little bit about green and just transition. And let me just say, Cooperrider, I'm overwhelmed that you are in the room. I didn't really notice that it was you when you presented. And if you ever come to Copenhagen, please let's meet up. I'd love to talk a lot more on these issues. I will come back to that.
Yeah.
So this picture is from Paris, and maybe you can see the vests the people there are wearing. That's called Yellow Vests. That's a movement in France where people of low income oppose to the green transition because it is imposing a lot of cost to them. The concrete reason why it rose was higher taxes on fuel, and poor people, they have old cars and they can't just buy a new electric. So they had the sense that they were paying for the rich. And this is one of these issues that green transition is not just a matter of change in technology and change in the systemic, but also a matter on thinking in democracy, in the just transition. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit more about. Let's see if I can find out how to change. Copenhagen is, as any other major city, of course, diverse, meaning that there are rich people, but there are also areas in the city that we have designated or framed as disadvantage, meaning that they is below the average of the city as a whole from a socio-economic perspective, meaning that these areas are where people have lower income, lower educational level, lower life expectancies, etc. So that's where we are focusing our initiatives, is to give the disadvantaged areas in Copenhagen the possibilities that also lies in the green transition. When we look, probably you have an image of Copenhagen as some kind of a fairy tale or Disneyland, but it's not only that. We have still a lot of housing where not only the physical part of the housing is deteriorated or in low standard, but also the public spaces. And we know for a fact that by making better housing, we can also reduce their energy consumption and thereby also reduce the inhabitants' energy bill. And let's see the next, sorry, well, how do I go back? Like that. Poverty is still also an issue in Copenhagen, though we probably can't compete with homelessness and people living in cars with the States, but even from a Copenhagen perspective, we have a poverty issue that we should also reflect. And crime is also here in Copenhagen something that dominates some parts of the city. Again, we don't have the amount that you probably are facing in the US. And then last but not least, that immigrants or immigration is an issue. There's a strong opposition in Denmark towards immigrants. On the other hand, the benefits of immigration is often underestimated, at least in the public conversation. So that's sort of the situation, so to speak. And all of these things could be described as wicked problems, that there's a lot of stakeholders and they do not necessarily agree. The regulation is complex, and often also that one part of the regulation is suppressing other parts of the regulation, meaning that it's very difficult to navigate. So all of these things, wicked problems, you probably know of that, we are trying to tackle within our local initiatives. So let's look at it more directly. When we talk about green and just transition, it's a phrase we have adopted from the European Union, and it has, from the green perspective, three pillars. It's about circular economy. We have adopted a plan for resources and circular economy, how to reduce waste basically, but also not only reducing waste, but also reuse, prolong life of whatever you buy. Then we have urban nature and biodiversity, and last but not least, the carbon neutral plan for 2025. We are about now to launch the next step. As you can see, it says 2025. It's not far away. So we will have or we are in the process now of creating a new 10-year plan towards not only carbon neutrality, but hopefully being carbon positive, meaning that we will be able to be carbon not positive, negative, meaning that carbon storage and other sort of technologies will be introduced. So those are the sort of the green part of of the strategy. And then we have on the social or the just, we have a co-create Copenhagen plan that's about engaging. That's the democratic part of it, that Copenhagen is not planned and designed from a top, but it's done in a co-creative, in a partnership with the citizens, but also with NGOs, businesses, universities, etc. And social cohesion, as I said, we know that there is an inequality. There will be probably always some kind of inequality, but we have in these disadvantaged areas, we have a specific strategy. And all of these agendas, they of course will meet everyday people. They land on the roof, so to speak. When we're looking down into some of these pillars, we are focusing on materials, quality, and life cycle. That's because I come from the building part of the world. We are also looking for how can we green houses and urban spaces, and we are looking into renewables, flexibility for the energy transition. This we do, and this looks a little bit complex, but this is also how we try to tackle these wicked problems. That we have a top-down policy, those I showed you before, and they are, because we are a large organization, they are all in different sectors. So we have made a governance structure where we have taken people from the different sectors, from the different policies, and put them in the same room. Then we have 4 place-based one-stop shops, so to speak, where we have employed local climate facilitators, and then they can, together with the community, they can construct their own local climate action plan. And they can communicate that to those who are sitting with the policies, and the policy people can listen, and then they can change the policies to better stimulate local initiatives, local dreams. So this is not only a matter of listening to people, but actually having an ongoing conversation. We are trying to be as data-driven as possible and asset-based. And this is based basically on the thinking from the appreciative inquiry theories. Asset-based community development, I believe, was invented in the US in the 90s, and we have adopted the thinking that if you only look at people from a problem-oriented perspective, and that was what we do when we are looking from a political or a policy point of view, that's problem-oriented. We are emitting too much CO2, we are using too much energy, the housing is poor, people are victims of crime, etc. It's all about issues and problems. But when you turn that down to have a conversation at community level, then you have to flip it and not ask, are you sad and sorry? Because then the answer will be, yes, we are sad and sorry. And that is not empowering people, that is disempowering. So there we flip the conversation and talk about what are their resources, what are their possibilities. And one of the things we are working very much on right now is energy communities. One thing that is dawning on us is that until now, the city basically has been a consumer, meaning it has been passive. We have taken in energy, heat, etc. into our housing, and that's it. We haven't delivered anything back. But putting up, like here, it's PVs, we can start giving something back to the city. that the houses can be active part of the energy system. And it's not only about producing energy like here on PVs, but also being flexible. A house is also a battery for heat. So having this possibility from our utility company to turn on and off the heat will not necessarily, because there's this battery effect in housing, it will not necessarily affect the people who live there, but it can peak shave, meaning that we can reduce the need for more investment in our energy system, which I think is quite brilliant and can be adopted anywhere in the world. But if you don't, empowering is not only about sort of having the ability to participate, but it's also the knowledge, the capacity building. And here you see one of our local climate officers is down in the boiler room talking with people who live in that concrete house on how they can manage their own energy system in the house. And this is not unusual that the boiler room is a little bit complex, and it's probably also a little bit worn out. So we easily find that by just adjusting the boiler room, we can cut 20–30% of the energy use in the building. And that's not something we do from apart, but we do it together with those people who actually live and operate in the house, that they understand their house, they understand their situation. There's nothing more passivating that you don't understand the technology that you are using. Probably very few people know how their mobile phone operates, meaning if it doesn't, they don't know what to do about it. And so also with your energy consumption, you need to know how to act and what you can actually do in your everyday life. And this we do very much using appreciative inquiry methods like the SAW model. I made it 10 years ago and I've used it ever since.
Wow. Amazing.
I just love it. Where you have this local conversation on what are your dreams, what are your aspirations, what are your resources, and the SWOT analysis will tell you that the life is full of threats and you're weak and whatever, where the SAW analysis looks much more on how can you utilize your own resources, how can you get funding or resources from outside, what do you dream, and which results do you want to see. Like I said, one of the very big things is to bridge between, yeah, you get very high at these local conversations, but then you leave the building and then what? I think like the SAW model gives you an answer to then what. Mm-hmm. So we want to engage and empower people. We want to make strong communities, but also create new job opportunities, meaning that we accelerate the green transition, reduce energy poverty, and create better housing. And that was it for me for the moment. I see there's a lot of things going on in the chat.
Excellent, excellent. Yes.
And yes, of course, you will have my slides.
Thank you. A lot of positive response. Great questions for Oystein. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate some of the slides I've never seen before, in fact. Good visuals to the work you all do.
Oystein,
yeah.
I love the focus on the just and the green transition, and your example of the community energy is powerful. You know, I just was in a meeting with some folks on that in Europe, and they did a research study that showed that community-based renewable energy systems return 4 times more benefit to the community than just the big developers or, from the government.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just that's such a win-win-win thing. And I love it. How are you unfolding that?
Well, first of all, I think you have to recognize that changing people's mind is not something you do overnight. That it takes a long time for a neighborhood to transform itself. So we try to work in these initiatives for at least 5 or 6 years.
Okay. Yep.
And even that, you could say, is just igniting the process. So that's also part of this dialogue between top-down, bottom-up. If it's not supported by long-term initiatives, then it will dry out.
Yep.
The other thing is to be very observant on on the governance, the local governance model. You could talk about the triangle. Triangles are very strong, and if you have strong committed citizens, you have local NGOs, and you have the authority, the municipality around the table, then you will have a strong combination. Citizens themselves, they can go far, but they can't go the whole way. Right. The municipality in itself can go somewhere, but not the whole way. Right. NGOs, universities, businesses, whatever, they can also go, etc. But if they combine their forces, there you have a construct that can actually last long. Yeah. So what you often see is that those who are creating the plan, those who are creating the project, they also own it in their heart. Yeah. And people are not necessarily completely stable. Some get married and move abroad. Some get a new exactly
and don't come back.
Some whatever. So being able to make it not too personal dependent, there you need some kind of organization, and that's where the citizens, they will come with legitimacy, and they will come with energy, and they will come with a lot of knowledge, and they can act, and they can endorse and everything, but they are not those who are able to continue if they move, because they can't go and recruit someone new. Yeah. Whereas, and municipalities, they are often a little bit at a distance. So that's where often it will be community centers or local NGOs or so that has the ability that if an employee or a volunteer leave, then they can take on a new one. Yeah. And it's very important to have this thinking of who is anchoring, who is taking on the obligation of ensuring that if someone leaves, there can come someone else.
Awesome.
We sometimes in literature you will also find it as meta governance, and the meta governor is an important key here. And I'm absolutely sure that Michael will probably now be looking for articles on meta governance.
I like it. You know me well. You know me well. Well, I only won't, because we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we're getting any remaining questions. Thanks for those comments and questions, David, to Oystein. And Oystein, thank you for laying out different ways of seeing engagement, even in the design thinking of visuals, like what because the top-down, bottom-up models are are a visual that's limited in opportunity. And as you were talking about triangle or other ways in which we visualize this work, that's so important to upend the status quo and the ways we've done this in the past. Additional questions for folks?
Just browsing through some of the in the chats. NIMBY is named here. I can see that, and that's absolutely right. That top-down yellow vest, that's very extreme, but you will have this opposition when people have the sense that an initiative is imposed on them, and that's where NIMBY becomes, and for some, the only way to react. They don't see a way to be constructive, and then you're cornered, and then you get aggressive. So when you construct plans or make initiatives that corners people, don't be surprised if they oppose.
That's right. That's right.
So that's exactly why we are so focused on engaging communities in the conversation on what to do, because that's where you can turn around. Another one of my favorite quotes from the AI world is, behind every problem there's a dream.
Yeah.
So if you are presenting people with a problem and you make people a problem, then you have a problem. But if you are talking about what is the dream behind, what are your aspirations, you can address, you can say we have a problem, yes, but the problem will be because you want something else. Let's look at this something else.
Speaking
That's
of
one of the thinkings that we're trying to do, and I think if you don't have if you don't have this community conversation, it will also be about me. I have a dream. I have a dream, but it's not necessarily Michael's dream. And then we have again this opposition. So you don't have this. You don't create commons by looking at individuals. So you have to have this community perspective to construct these commons. Like, what's her name? She won the Nobel Prize in Economy some years ago. Olson, something like that. She wrote about that creating and having this commons philosophy. That's also part of the fabric. Elinor Ostrom, of course. Have any of you tried any particular benefits from networks you build through? Yes, we can see that when we make these interventions, we can see that in roughly the money the municipalities spend on these initiatives will be met by a factor 5 from the private sector. And as I said, yes, we can see from estates that their energy consumption drops with 10, 15, 20% after we have made interventions and had these conversations. Yes, we can see that crime rates drops. We see that schools can reduce their budget for graffiti, etc. So yes, we do. It's still very difficult actually to say one-to-one what we did had this effect, because it's a multiple. There's a multiple factors, and there's a lot of other stuff that's going on. But yes, we can.
This is great, and thanks for answering the question in chat about economic development, professional development. Carlinke, you went off. You showed up in video, so it looked like you're about to say something. I just wanted to check in with you because.
No, I just I thought it's nicer to look at people's heads when we're talking instead of just names. So I thought, well, the presentation is over, so now I'll be joining.
Excellent. I just wanted to get something to say. I look forward to the collaboration that may come from Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and Cooperrider in Cleveland based on this conversation, because there's clear overlap in kind of positive approach here. We've got 5 minutes left. Any additional comments or questions from the panelists or from those attending? And thanks to everyone for joining and for your great questions in chat and on video. I love these conversations, and I'm so thankful to you, Carlinke, and you, David, and you, Oystein, for spending time with us today and for sharing about your incredible work in your communities. More comments coming in chat, wonderful presentations. Rich with great tactical insights about the real work. Thanks for this comment. Yes, Gina, David, thank you all. Okay, well, again, thank you for joining this salon, Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. So grateful to our panelists for spending time and sharing their lessons learned of the work.
Thanks for your invitation.
Yeah, and here's to more of it and more collaboration. And I'm sure, David, we need to get you over to Amsterdam and Copenhagen to brainstorm with Carlinke and Oystein about work together.
Yes, I do resonate with Frank Giel's multi-level perspective. And that's also what we're trying. If you are familiar with Frank Giel's, these shift in landscape that opens up for niche initiatives. That's actually, we're trying to open that window and enable communities to send in new initiatives, new thoughts, new technologies into the socio-economic fabric. So yes, Frank Giels is also a friend of mine.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It's great to see you. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And thank you again, panelists, for your time today.
Thank you, Michael.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Everybody.
Yeah.